for me, the ring and the marriage ceremony and the I do's was the ultimate fire insurance from ever having to experience heartbreak again, be abandoned, and that I would get to go through my life with my best friend and always have somebody with me in all of the journeys of life, and that's really what I wanted.
You're listening to Shall We Unpack This? With your host, Leilani Carrasco. Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of Unpacking Divorce, Marriage, and Reconciliation. So just to give you some context of where Dave and I were coming from at the time that we met. We were both high schoolers at the time of the True Love Waits movement, which basically rallied behind the idea of saving sex for marriage. By the time we entered college, books on courting were really popular. I Kissed Dating Goodbye was one you've probably heard of, but the one that made the biggest impact on me was a book called When God Writes Your Love Story. It's a story about a 21-year-old man and a 16-year-old girl and how they courted. They got married 3 years later, and in that process, they never kissed. They never hugged each other in a full frontal boob squishy manner. They were accompanied on dates by either a chaperone or another couple. And when they got married is when they had their first kiss. And everything was saved for the wedding day. It was kind of like a Christian Twilight in that it seemed kind of toxic, but also very intriguing and maybe even a little sexy in its own weird way. That story really appealed to me because I was someone that wanted to do everything perfectly, especially around dating. I was terrified to date. I didn't know how to put myself out there. And what if I found some creep? Or what if I got stood up? I wasn't ready to face any of that drama. And here is this fairy tale story that says, hey, you can be spared all of that and it will turn out beautifully and you'll live happily ever after. And to be fair, this couple seemed like they were following this path from a place of true conviction, but that's a very unique situation that they were in. It is not for everybody, and it certainly wasn't for me. It felt safe, but I was approaching it from, this will protect me, and I'm afraid of life, and this is going to keep me from having to experience any issues or any problems in a relationship. Looking back on that season, I needed to explore relationships. But courting, not only does it look down on sex before marriage, but it looks down on even dating at all. And there's some value in dating that I didn't see at the time. I wanted the most surefire path to guarantee that I would never experience any hardship in relationship. And this was how I was going to do it. Follow the courting rules. Make sure, first of all, that I had graduated college and that I was out on my own, that we were best friends first. And so as our relationship unfolded, Dave and I met all the checklist points, which would hopefully, I would think, save us from about 90% of the issues that couples face, right? The only thing we didn't do was we did not save that first kiss for our wedding day. And I remember feeling disappointed in myself and sad after our first kiss. And that's what is so grievous about religion. It takes anything and everything and just pours shame and guilt on it. You can't even have a decent first kiss without feeling ashamed. And I remember waking up the morning of our wedding day feeling like somehow I had disappointed God because I'd replaced him with a man. And the Apostle Paul says, it's best that you be single. And I failed. It's sad to start your wedding day with shame and guilt. I wanted to share all this to really lay a foundation of where Dave and I were coming from and our mindsets around dating when we met. So without further ado, let us unpack our marriage. So with that, how did we meet? Our stories kind of didn't line up. Even when we were married, I'm like, our first kiss was this day, and you're like, no, it wasn't. It was this time. I was like, oh, man.
It could. Yeah. I'm going to introduce this to you, Leilani. I don't know if you believe in this or not.
Whoa. Could it have been both? What? That's like a mind blown.
That's not the question you were asking, though.
Yeah, that's a whole other. Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't remember.
Dave does not remember how we met, ladies. Or you're Dee. What do you? I've been calling you Dave. I've been calling you Dave this whole time. Okay.
All right. So when we were married, I created a persona for this radio show that I created called The Appetizer, and I was D. Grant Smith because Dave Smith to me was the most boring radio name in the world. Dave Smith. First initial, middle name, last name. And then when we split up, I didn't want to be Dave anymore. I saw Dave as being this weak person that his wife leaves him, so I can't be that. I need to be somebody else. And so I rebranded my whole human existence, and even asked my family to not call me Dave anymore. I basically divorced myself from myself. Whoa. Which, talk about self-rejection.
Wow. Yeah.
Which I had to face years later. But I spent a long time being very ashamed of the name Dave and ashamed of that version of myself. There's I still call myself Dave sometimes. Most people call me D or D Grant. That's my preferred name, sort of. But actually, to be really honest with you, David is my fucking name. And, like, there's a huge part of me that's like, no, I was named after a king. That's who I fucking am. So, pardon the F words if that bothers you. But I don't care. To you, I'm Dave.
You're
so
Dave.
That's fine. I don't remember our first kiss. Part of the reason why I stopped drinking is because memory is such a big deal to me. And when I realized that, like, I don't remember what I did the night before.
Wow.
There's so much about that night that I hurt you.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to me. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to other people in my life.
Wow.
And I'm known for having a great memory. People are like, yeah, Dee just remembers everything. And I do. So for me to have these portions of my life story that are like erased from my own hard drives, deal breaker. So, but I think I erased parts of my story with you because I didn't want to remember that anymore. Yeah. It didn't have relevance anymore. And so I'm happy to have conversation about it, but until you start talking about things, I'm not going to remember anything.
All right, fair enough. Well, it's interesting because one thing I do remember right off the bat, it's funny that you mention your name because when we met, you were going by Dave because you're like, I don't relate to David anymore. David is something in my... So it's like...
I have this history.
You do. So when you were going to when you had changed your name and other people were referring to you that as that, I was like, he has always had an issue with his name. So we had...
Full circle.
Yeah, interesting. We had met, we were both going to this church at the time, and we were in a college group, and I just remember you went to the early service. I'm like, that's a college student, but he goes to the early service. Like,
when you have to work at 5:30 in the morning, your body wakes up early. By the way, it's 20-something years later. I wake up at 3:30, 2:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning every day now.
Oh, gross.
Still.
That's crazy. So you'd be at the early service coming through, and I had this thing about like skater boys, and you had the long hair, and I was like into Legolas, so the long blonde hair, and you dressed like with the Jinkos.
Let me show you something.
Oh, do you have a picture? Well, while you look for the photo, so I was into skater boys, and you kind of had that skater look, and so I was like, huh. And that's really like we had a college trip to San Antonio. And I was always kind of an awkward, whoa! Look at that. I don't even know if you can see. Look at that long hair. No, yeah. Oh my God.
I look like Kurt Cobain.
You do. Oh, that's awesome. I remember that shirt too. I think, no, not that shirt. Never mind. That's a different
wish
shirt.
I still had that shirt.
That was, that was Grunge Dave. Very cool picture. Very cool.
Thank you.
And so our college group kind of already had their friend groups, and we just were like, I think, extras floating around, and it was like, okay, you guys, we're gonna go to the Riverwalk today, and like all the like groups like left, and it was just kind of us, and it was like, well, let's hang out. And we were friends, I think, from day one. We just kind of had a natural rapport.
My recollection of this is we had known of each other for a long time.
Yeah.
But not ever spent any time together. We just seen each other in passing. Mm-hmm. And, I went to ACU, you went to Hardin-Simmons. There was a lot of the college crew that were all ACU people.
Yeah, I was kind of an odd man out there.
But I remember on the ride up to that retreat, we had kind of sat in the back, sort of close to each other, but not really.
Yeah.
Not really had conversation. I think we maybe exchanged a couple things together. And I thought, Leilani seems like a really interesting person. But we never had like an actual conversation. And when we were kind of, we went somewhere and I bought these little plastic ducks.
Ah, yes!
Because I wanted to actually get my ducks in a row. And I said that...
You were like, and I got my ducks in a row?
Because I remember you were like, why did you get those ducks? I'm like, I want to have my ducks in a row. And you thought that was hilarious. And so then the next day you asked me like, so are your ducks in a row yet? I'm like, I'm working on it.
Yeah. And I just find
And then, I remember us walking around. We got marble slab, I think.
Yes. Because I remember it melted onto your hand and you didn't notice. I'm like, when is he going to wipe this? This is my mind. Like, I remember the ice cream that you wouldn't wipe off your hand. It just stayed there forever. I'm like, how does he not feel that? How is that not driving him crazy?
And we ended up talking about Seinfeld a lot.
Oh, really?
And that's what endeared you to me. Because I wanted to have somebody that I could talk about things that I was really into. And we both liked The Lord of the Rings. We both liked Seinfeld. And there's probably like one or two other things.
But Beavis and Butthead.
Beavis and Butthead. And so like our friendship, if I'm not mistaken, began with us just like, here's somebody else that's weird like me, and that I can be weird with and not have to like try to put on these other masks to fit into all these other boxes that that the cool kids are doing that I don't really feel like I'm a part of. Of all the things that come full circle, this has come full circle too.
Here we are. Yep. So we just, it was just a big moment for me because growing up, I had this fear of men. I didn't grow up around Daddy. Grandfather lived across the street, but he was stern and kind of imposing, and I'm still unpacking the fear I have, like just feeling like
and Fred.
Yeah, and then my stepdad, was it was just like men were scary. And then even I wanted to date people in high school. I wanted to have boyfriends, but it would just get in my head to where I'm like, well, what are we going to talk about? And then I'm going to be alone with a boy. And I would just get really sick to my stomach and nervous. And then I hit college and I was just like awkward and gained a bunch of weight. And then I just I all but hissed at people just to like keep them away from me. I'm like, it's just me and God and nobody else. And so when it was just a natural relationship with us, it was several days, because then we just hung out all the time. It was several days into that I'm like, I haven't felt nervous. I don't have that sick to my stomach feeling whenever I hang out with Dave, or even plan to hang out with Dave and wait for him to show up, because that was always, if I planned something, it could be something as benign as the dad picking me up to go babysit his kid. That waiting for the dad to show up, sitting alone in the car with the dad, like all of that was scary to me. And with boys, the same thing. I'm like sick. But that didn't happen with you. And that is like, I think one of those landmark moments that you're like, I met a person that doesn't make me scared. But then I thought, like, I attached a lot of meaning to that. Like, you know, the one is talked about a lot when you're younger, and it's even more so in the church. You're really discouraged from dating. You're supposed to, like, find a person, lock them in, court them, not even kiss them or get to interact with them physically, and then marry them. And so it's like...
And make that commitment to go through all the different changes that they're going to go through in their life, and you're going to go through too, and you have to stay in, like, perfect harmony with each other throughout all of those shifts.
Yeah. And so I attached a lot of meaning to the fact that I felt safe with a man for the first time. Like, I feel safe. And then... so it was like, okay, well, I would like to, I don't know how this works, but maybe we can, like, date each other. I was like, and what's funny is I'm like 22 and still like, how does this work? Do we date each other? And we were, again, like, very entrenched in religion. So we were walking around ACU and we had the talk about, like, should we date? I don't know.
I remember that.
Yeah, so it was like, I don't know, like, let's separate. You go down that hallway, I'll go down this hallway, and we'll pray about it.
You came to my work.
Yeah.
And I was working the late shift, and we went up to the third floor because I had to check to make sure that this one light was on.
Oh, yeah.
And we went in our separate spaces, and I had a vision for what I prayed about it, had a vision for what I saw. She had a different vision. And when we came together, I was thinking that we were going to be on the same page, and we weren't.
I'm like, I heard it. Yeah. Like, yeah, explore this. Just, you know, date. And so I'm like, cool. And so we met, and you were like, I heard no. And I'm like, ah, you know, so already, like, that was the beginning of the end. No, just kidding. But it was like...
I had never even said I love you yet, and...
Oh, no! And then, so it was just kind of like this, like, we were still drawn to each other, but then we also had these ideas of what could be or what you thought your path was, and I was like, no, this is supposed to be... So, I mean, I dog paddle energy and, like, forcing things was my whole life. I have to force things to happen because... they're not going to happen otherwise, and I always have to be the driving force to, like, push these things and make them happen, and it was just so awkward between us, because it was like, I still very much wanted to date, and we probably should have just, like, dated and then realized, yeah, you know, like, this is...
Well, we definitely should have dated before we got married, and I take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Because, so, we had spent a lot of time together, and then I knew you liked me, and I liked you, but I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I was supposed to.
Yeah, it was not God's will.
And I was in that whole, like, you know...
Yeah, we're trying our best to just do the right thing, and it's a mess.
Making wise decisions, and also, at the same time, like, I, in a lot of ways, Leilani, was trying to protect your heart, because I had spent 3 years chasing after this girl, that very similar thing, like, I was trying to earn her love because I wasn't giving it to myself, and I was constantly trying to prove my worthiness to her and show her that I was, you know, worth, you know, marrying and settling down with. And I was doing the same thing to her that I would eventually do to you, where I'm trying to be this person so that I can be good enough. And of course, since my underlying root belief system and energy is unworthiness, of course, that's what she's sensing in her, you know, consciousness, and like, well, I'm not going to partner with this guy.
Yeah.
Whether she's aware of that or not, like, that was still what was happening. So when I finally stopped chasing after her, and then you and I started hanging out, and I'm like, I don't want to hurt this person. I need to heal, whatever the hell that means, myself, and gain some sort of fortitude, but I didn't want you to be a rebound. I'm just now realizing that, like, I didn't want Leilani to be a rebound. Wow. And so...
And I'm like, no!
Wait, so then you went to London, right, that time, for 4 months. And I missed you immensely. And then when you came back, I was like, I am very attracted to her. I wonder if she still likes me. I have loved getting to talk to her every day through email. Like, reading your emails was the one thing that got me up in the morning. Because going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning was not the thing that got me. But, like, thinking, like, maybe there'll be another email from Leilani, like, that got me excited. And I would read it over and over again.
Same, yeah, and, just dwell.
And so when you came back, I was like, I'm going to graduate. I think I want to marry this person. Now, that's such a leap because we hadn't had these conversations. We hadn't really talked in romantic
We talked a lot. We didn't talk very much for people who talked a lot to each other. Isn't this funny?
We talked a lot about things that were not important at all. Like,
yeah.
You know, we were nerds together.
Yeah.
We were nerds about different things. We talked a lot about spirituality and what God was doing and all these different things. But, like, I didn't share with you my feelings.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Or, like, what we're thinking, like, yeah.
There was so much that was, like...
just completely missed for all of our talking.
I remember saying, hey, I don't want to date you, I want to marry you. And you said, okay. Or something along those lines.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a pivotal moment. I went to London because I'm like, I need to get out of here. And I need something else because I've just been chasing and forcing this odd relationship. And I was going crazy. Like, I would kind of stalk the church parking lot so I could see your truck. And then I would drive around it like, I'm going to pray over him. I'm just here to pray. And I would just do these things. I was just mad. I was just bonkers. But so finally, I came back and it seemed like you were interested and excited to see me, but when I threw open the door, I opened the door and he's got his hands in his pockets and he looks at me.
Here's the thing: I was trying to be Zach Morris because I was from watching all those Saved by the Bell episodes.
Yeah, you played it so cool.
I was so convinced that if I could be Zach Morris, that I'd be this cool guy and she'd just like fall head over heels in love with me. But that's not that guy's a douchebag.
He was, yeah. So that was so wounding to me. I'm like, that's one of those.
I was not being myself.
Yeah.
I was trying to be somebody else to try to win over your heart when I didn't have to do any of that stuff. I just needed to be me.
Yeah. If you'd have been like, hey, it would have been so satisfying. But yeah, we play these things and we're just young and crazy. But yeah, we started hanging out again, and then it was like 2 weeks after I came back. It's your graduation night, and we're sitting on the couch, and I think at one point I'm sitting on your lap, and it's like, well, where do we go from here?
Oh yeah.
And I thought you were telling me to leave. I'm like, you're right, I should go home. And you were like, no, about us. And I was like, oh, he's ready to have this conversation, because by the day before this all happened, I was like sitting in my car pounding the steering wheel like, I'm tired of chasing this person. I don't want this anymore. I just want to be myself. I want to figure out who I am and go on my own journey. And I felt such peace when I was like, it's just going to be me, and I'm going to figure me out.
And then the next day, you're like, what about us? As soon as you detach, I come over.
You're like, ready. So it felt like such a cosmic joke. But when you were like, you were like, what about us? And then we talked, and you were like, well, I don't want to date. If you date me, you marry me. And I was like,
because I was so afraid.
You gotta lock that shit in.
So afraid.
Yeah.
I
see it now.
I had dated somebody for, to me, 1.5 years, but to her 3 months, because we were never official. Well, you don't do that's a different story. I'm not gonna get out. Nobody's business but ours. But like, there was so much confusion there that I was like, I don't want to ever play this dating game again because it's just gonna end in heartbreak. So instead of doing that whole thing, if you're willing to be my girlfriend, and you're willing to be my wife, which is dumb as.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
So and I sat there on your lap, and I'm like, can I pray just a minute? And so I closed my eyes, and I'm like, what do I do? This is sudden. And I was like, shit, I'm taking too long. Just one more minute. And I'm praying, and I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, like, well, because I've spent a year and a half pining for Dave and hoping this would work out. That all seems like a waste to throw away now. So, yeah, okay. But we even then left on like, okay, all right. And I left thinking I've always wanted to be wooed and to be to like go date and stuff. But this is also, I've never felt safe with a guy before, and all these things and all our history.
Man.
And so like 2 days later, we see each other at church, and again, like, you play the cool guy, like, you did that instead of coming up to us.
Oh my god, dude.
And so then we went somewhere afterwards for lunch, and we got
Clearly I had no game.
None.
And clearly I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah. So we got in the car and we were buckling in, and you turn to me and you say, yes. And I was like, yes? And you're like, yes. Yes? Yes, I will date you. You said, yes, I will date you. We're dating. And I'm like, okay, we're dating. Okay. I thought we covered this on Friday, but I guess we're official now. Like, it was so confusing.
Yeah, I remember all of this now. I'm so sorry.
It couldn't have been any better. At
this point in time, I'm so glad that almost 20 years later.
So one thing though that I do want to highlight is the whole, to a wounded person that is longing for validation and obsession, not love, obsession. Love
does not. That thinks obsession is love.
Yeah. Exactly. When you said, I don't want to date you, if you date me, you marry me, that did not feel right immediately. But then my brain was like, see how passionately he loves you? Like, he's obsessed with you. He doesn't even want to date you. He wants to have you right away. And so my brain kind of switched that into a romantic gesture, and then dial it back when I'm like, I don't know, leaving the house. I'm like, that was a red flag.
And I was trying to be romantic in this super passionate sort of way, but there's so much of this like old-fashioned passion from the movies and some Disney movie kind of shit, and because none of the princess and princesses dated.
No.
They were betrothed to each other mystically. And they kissed one time, and they knew. Yeah,
they met in the forest, danced, kissed.
They sang a couple songs together, and
and then they get married, and that's perfectly normal. And we love the movie, yay! So toxic.
So we've talked about this. When we're going to premarital counseling, I saw it as something to check off the list, so that the right people that were going to approve of us getting hitched would sign, like. It was a checklist, and I just wanted to check off the stupid thing so we could get on down the road. And for me, the ring and the marriage ceremony and the I do's was the ultimate fire insurance from ever having to experience heartbreak again, be abandoned, and that I would get to go through my life with my best friend and always have somebody with me in all of the journeys of life, and that's really what I wanted. Now, I do believe in soulmates. I do believe in the whole one thing, but it's evolved a lot since my youth and 20s and all that stuff. But in all the praying that I was doing, I never asked God or my higher self, like, hey, is this the person that I'm supposed to be spending the rest of my life with? Never asked that question. And I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before or not.
We'll see. We'll find out.
2015, 16-ish, when things are kind of starting to, like they've been kind of rocky for a little bit, but like
it was hard. Yeah,
we're butting heads on the regular basis.
Every day we're bickering.
You were walking up the stairs, and I thought to myself, why am I having this much calamity and stress with my soulmate? And the inner parts of me said, who said she was your soulmate?
Yeah.
She's not your soulmate.
Yeah.
But you never bothered to ask that question before. And I'm like, then I'm getting mad at God, like, why did you let me marry this person that's not my soulmate? To me, like, even if divinely we weren't supposed to be together, I had made this commitment and this decision, and I swore that I was never going to get divorced because, shit, I wasn't going to be my father.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am in the same fucking boat.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much of my dad's life and my life that have been very parallel. And I recognize so much of, like, this living in somebody else's shadow that I'm telling myself I don't want to live in, but I'm subconsciously and consciously doing the same things to put myself back in that place. And yeah, so there's all kinds of stuff to unpack there, but
yeah, so much unpacking. And what's funny about you saying, "Oh, I'm not going to be my dad," it seemed like all the traits that caused me the most stress and turmoil with my stepdad, I just sucked him up like a straw. And so, like, I found myself behaving and getting stressed out and causing a lot of stress between us. And I'm like, this is Fred coming out. How is this coming out? Like, that was supposed to be something I didn't want. And now it's just, it's just so interesting. Yeah. Interesting how the very thing you don't want to be, you just are acting out. It's just unchecked. So yeah, we got married, and I remember when we were engaged, I was thinking, I have so many skeletons in my closet, and now this person's gonna see how awful it is inside, and just how bad of a person I am. And so this is going to be really interesting, because then they're going to stop loving me. And, it was just this, again, just this toxic, but, no tools. It was just like God, and somehow Jesus is going to take care of it. And that's all you need. What's interesting when you said you saw me walk up the stairs and the whole, like, that's not, who said that was your soulmate? I had that moment at Hardin Simmons at like 2 p.m. I remember you even wearing a sweater and your hat and everything. And one thing we did when we were friends is we'd pray together. We can't date, but we can still pray together because we're prayer warriors. And so we run all these prayer groups together that, like, other different people would, like, assign us to. And so we're, like, sitting on my bed. We were praying, but we're, like, all really close. And you were giving me, like, an hour-and-a-half long massage, which fan-fucking-tastic. And I'm like, I just want to touch him. But I'm just praying. It's just, oh my gosh. So I felt even closer to you because, I felt a spiritual connection with you. And I said, like, this was in the springtime after things had gotten awkward. No, we're not going to date. Okay, like, Leilani's weird and she keeps pushing this down the road. Like, I just felt like... Is that the story you were telling yourself? Yeah, well, not that you were saying that I was weird, but I know you were trying to avoid me, just to stop the hurting. But there was this avoidant phase. I was avoiding you. But it was not because of that. Yeah, you didn't want to hurt me. I see that. There were two things. Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me finish. Sorry. Okay, so we finally started kind of hanging out again because there was a hiatus there where it got weird and we didn't hang out. And I'm like, but we were at Hardin Simmons taking a walk, and I was like, but I miss praying with you. And you, like, did the whole, like, pull the sleeves up, and you're like, yeah, but... Classic me. I feel like that's something you need to save to do with your husband. Your future husband, whoever that is. And that it was almost like my ears heard that, and then my heart was like, he means what he says. You are not his wife. But I was like, but that's not fair. Like, no, this is supposed to work. But that echoed, like, that's something you're supposed to say for your husband. And I'm thinking, but I want you to be, I don't know, I want us to do so, I don't know, I was so confused, but that was one of those moments too where it's like, the writing is on the wall, girl, like, let it go. He's not saying this maliciously, but this is now at this point you're like forcing this. So yeah, that was my story. So you didn't think that was weird. You were kind of like keeping distance. So
I didn't want to hurt you, but I also felt like you were controlling me.
Ooh. No, I was just driving around your car praying. I was just praying.
So here's my story that I remember. I went over to Jason Ross's house, and we were going to play FIFA or Madden or something. We were going to play video games. And you called me, and you were like, hey, let's hang out or whatever. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't hang out right now. I'm going to go hang out with these people. And you got really mad at me. And you said a bunch of things about like how could I abandon or like leave, not tell you that I had other plans, or there was I don't remember, obviously I don't remember exactly what you said.
I don't remember
but
this.
It was something along the line, like the tone of your voice, and you got really upset with me for making plans to go hang out with my other friends. And I felt like I didn't have the right or the like ability to make my own decisions for what I do with my time. And I was like, I don't want anybody to tell me what I can and cannot do. We're not dating, we're not married, we're not like, we're friends that hang out or whatever, but like, nobody should be able to tell me what I can and cannot do with my time. And I think I probably mentioned that to one of my older like mentor people, and they're like, you need to create some space, man, like that's not healthy. And so that's when I stopped.
Ooh.
But once we got married, then I felt like, well, I have to do what she says now.
Yeah.
Like any freedom that I had prior, I lost that freedom. Now I'm married to her, I have to make her happy.
Yeah.
Because again, my family dynamic
was your dynamic.
If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. I heard that at work, and I heard that everywhere else. And your job as a husband is to give your wife whatever it is that she wants, and if she wants your time, your energy, or whatever, like you acquiesce that, and you don't have a social life. So I was in the first year or two of our marriage, I was trying to like get you to have friends and have a social life so that I could have one, because I wanted to go, like, I felt like it was I was getting, like, to get to do something that I wanted to do when I would go play football with the guys, like, for 30 minutes, like, on a weekday afternoon. And I was like, and I didn't realize that, like, I needed to have time to just, like, hang out with other people, aside from being at work. And I spent so much time at work, and then I'd come home and, we would hang out, but, like, I didn't have a social life. I didn't have any interactions with other people, and it felt unfair, but I didn't know how to talk about that with you. And I didn't think that I could talk about it with you. So, which, that's not on you, that's
it's just night and day. What is so mind-boggling about this is that when we split, autonomy and time alone and not being controlled, I was not going to put that on anyone, and I didn't want anyone to give that to me. And so now it's just like, take all the space you need, give me a lot of space, and let me I did not get that. I did not have that capacity when we were together, because I was still so wounded. So when I referenced, oh my gosh, I'm engaged to this person, he's gonna see all my skeletons, that was the big skeleton. I knew how insecure I was. I knew how much I was going to make you play with me, stay with me, pick me. And again, it's that little girl that just wants to be picked by people that have already established their friend group and don't need me, but I really want to be picked. So anything and everything was a threat. And that is a lot to put on someone, because I see now, holy shit, I can't imagine doing that with someone's time now. You want to go hang out with friends? Yes, have a life. Go play. And I can play now too. That means I can play. But at the time, my college friends were moving everywhere, and the dynamics between guy friends and girlfriends are very different. Like, guys can go and hang out and whatever, and girls are like, well, we're having children now, we do this now, and I couldn't, all my friends were going away. So then it was almost like a sibling dynamic. Well, you can't go play with your friends because I have no friends, so that's not fair. You know, it was just all of this, just so completely compressed, unprocessed childhood wounding that caused me to control you like I did, because I was like, I cannot be replaced. I feel like I have my role, and my place of importance is like always hanging on the precipice, you know, ready to fall off the cliff. And he's not going to pick me, and he has to pick me, because if he doesn't, that means I'm not loved, and all this stuff. So
I didn't do this every day, but there were several days that I would kind of just go down and sit in the study and look out the window and wonder if you were going to come back. And I thought that you would go out and you would like date somebody or get into a relationship with somebody and have some sort of awakening and be like, I really did have a good man that I was married to. Why did I walk away? I don't want to walk away. I want to go home. And I thought that was what was going to happen. And I would pray about that in a way. And there was a part of me that for a while I was waiting for that to happen. And then after a period, I was like, dude, you really, like, when you said you let her go, you've got to really let her go. I think when I let that go, that's when I did start to feel the anger. Because I hadn't let myself feel anger yet.
wow.
And I hadn't let myself feel bitterness. I hadn't let myself be mad at you. I hadn't like looked at you from that other perspective because I didn't want to. I didn't want you to be the villain in my story.
You're so much better than me in that way, because I'm like I need a villain, someone who will play this role of villain.
But I had to let myself get to that place. I had to let myself get to a place where I hated you. I had to let myself, as much as I didn't want to, I had to let myself feel the anger. I had to beat the fuck out of some punching bags and like exercise heavily in my old school boxing ways to get that energy out, because it was inside of me, but I didn't want to look at it. It was something that I had suppressed, and you know, if you don't feel it and you don't let yourself process it, it's going to come out and be like a zombie and take over some other part of your life. So I've got to let myself feel this so it can do what it's going to do, have its thriller dance all over the place, and then move on down the road.
I don't envy that. And again, it's really interesting that the things you're describing that you felt after, naturally, were all the things I was feeling before and, like, going out. Like, because I felt it in my body, and I'm like, I'm going to push this down one more year, because you're not supposed to divorce. You're just going to show yourself that you're flaky. Why even get married in the first place if it's just going to end in divorce? Your life is going to mean it's a lie. You got to keep pushing this down the road. And so I woke up one morning in January of 2017 with my stomach on fire. It was like my body was like, you have to say stuff. You have to fess up, girl, because your body is really just destroying itself. It's interesting that all that I was feeling it. And that's why I was going to the gym so much and working I would go clean houses all day, like 3 houses in one day. And then I would go to the gym, go all out in a class or 2, then run as fast as I could on the treadmill after that. And then I'd get home and I'd be so anxious that I wouldn't eat. So I like dropped weight like crazy because I was just like, blah. And I just burnt my body out. Like, my body felt so abused by the end of that. But that was me. That was my old school boxing moves, like, and the process of it happening.
So we went through the same process at different times.
Yeah. Like, and then so when it was done, it was done. Grieving is an interesting beast because it does not respect timelines. The grieving process for me started the last few years of our marriage. For Dave, it happened as the relationship was ending. I call that last year of marriage the year of tears. I cried so much. I'm surprised I still have eyes. And it was weird. I would like walk out of the kitchen and enter the living room, and it's like just the change of scenery would cause me to burst into tears again. Or I'd go from the house to my car, burst into tears. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever experienced. It was just like crying all the time in private, because then I'd have to like, hide the tears, like that scene in Love Actually, like, okay, let's swallow this down. Okay, let's go out and present ourselves. I've often heard the phrase, when a woman is done, she's done. She'll stop calling. She'll stop bringing up the issues that she used to bring up. She'll stop trying. And when she stops doing those things, watch out, because it's over. And I think that's true for people in general, not just women. When you're done, you're done. And by the end of our relationship, I was done crying. This gets no more tears. I have cried every last tear that I'm going to for this marriage. And so when I'm moving out, I felt relief. It can seem very much like one person in a relationship is cold-hearted and the other person is not. They might just be going through different phases of the grief process. You just never know. So, yeah.
But even like, there were lots of moments that were difficult.
Mm-hmm.
There are also so many beautiful moments.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as much as my feet hurt the entire time, going to London with you was an absolute beautiful trip.
Wow. See, because I felt like I was dragging you everywhere, and that trip caused so much stress in my body.
There were two things I wanted to do that I didn't get to do, but it was also like I didn't advocate for my own voice, and there's a lot of things in our relationship that like I wanted and I would say it, but like I didn't have strong enough boundaries and strong enough fortitude in myself to be like, no, I get what I want too. And the peacemaker in me didn't want to create any sort of tension. I felt already uncomfortable in the fact that like we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and so I was trying to acquiesce and make you happy, which is not fair to either one of us. But in England, I should not have bought brand new shoes and taken those brand new shoes because as the main thing I was going to be wearing for 10 days because we walked 7 miles a day on average.
Like, yeah.
And I was used to walking like, I don't know, 2,000 steps a day at that time.
Yeah.
And that was probably a lot at the time. But my feet hurt the entire time. And you were very gracious with me still, even though like I felt like I was slowing you down from being able to do all the things that you wanted to do. But towards the last 3 days that we were there, we had spent 7 days with and I wanted to just hang out, the two of us. And so we got to do that we got, I don't know if
like,
we got
like last 2 days,
kind of
maybe?
like an Airbnb or a hotel.
Yes, somewhere. We stayed at the Irish or the Celtic hotel.
Yeah, and I loved that.
Yeah,
that was fun.
That was a cool place.
We also went to Maine together and rode the train from Boston to Portland. That was fun.
Yeah.
We did some really fun trips together, and I celebrate that. We went to Mexico several times. And you were supportive of me during some very difficult points in life that, like, I don't think I ever thanked you for. If I did, I didn't thank you enough. Or I don't feel like I did. And so, hindsight being what it is, like, you had plenty of reasons to feel stressed and tense and probably angry and upset at me for a variety of other things than the stuff that was on the surface. But you were supportive of me and all the craziness that I went through for however many years that was. And your strength and support of me through that is really meaningful now, 15 years later.
I see now how much we served the word divorce. Get married so that you never divorce, and then you'll never be alone again. And yet, the loneliest I've ever been was in those last years of our marriage. The act of marriage is at most an agreement. It's an agreement. It's like that line in Spaceballs. Do you? Yes. Do you? Yes. Okay, you're married. But for us, marriage was fire insurance. It was the magical glue that was going to fill all the cracks in our hearts, and we were going to live happily ever after. And I see now that our fairy tale delusions kind of made us passive in the relationship. We passively waited for things to change. And when those didn't change, then we became passive aggressive, or sometimes full on aggressive. In spite of all of this, in spite of all the hurt and hardship, we still had some great memories. Went on some cool trips. We owned a house together, had some great laughs. And at the end of the day, we were married almost 12 years. And if I still served that word divorce, I would see all of that as a waste. Because if it was so great, then why'd you get divorced? And it's weird because if I remember correctly, our vows stated divorce is not an option. I've heard that from other couples, especially ones from the church. Divorce is not an option. In fact, I think it was an older couple in the church that had put that idea on us and inspired us to put it in our vows. But we never once thought to put instead, criticism is not an option. Defensiveness is not an option. Stonewalling, crossing each other's boundaries is not an option. Those should have made their way into our vows. Because we crossed each other's boundaries all the time. Or rather, we didn't cross each other's boundaries ever because we never set any officially. We didn't know how. We didn't know how to sit down with each other and say, when you do these things, I feel controlled, disrespected, unloved, taken for granted, and I don't want to feel that way in this relationship. So here's what we're going to do, and here are the consequences if it doesn't happen that way. I felt like, well, we can't talk like that because divorce is not an option, and there is no way out. So if boundaries are broken left and right, there's nowhere to go. And I know in an interview, you can't really share the depths of where your heart was at different places in time. But as I listen to this interview play out, I hear the reasons why we wanted to save the marriage wasn't out of love. Based on what I heard, it was out of the fear of getting divorced. The fear of seeming flaky, the fear of following in father's footsteps. I didn't hear, however, choices being made out of love. But that word makes its appearance next week as we unpack the final portion of this story, our reconciliation. In the meantime, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Join us on Instagram at SWUT Podcast. That's SWUTPODCAST for further conversations, insights, and behind-the-scenes content from today's episode. And for the complete viewing experience, tune into Shall We Unpack This on YouTube. We'll see you next week.